Are you fully in control of your decisions, or is your gut influencing them before you even realize it? We're taught to think that clarity and our decisions come entirely from the brain, but early research is raising a surprising possibility. Science has discovered that cells in the gut send signals to the brain in milliseconds, faster than your conscious thought even travels. And that connection matters because gut health isn't just about digestion. It sets the tone for your mental bandwidth, your emotional steadiness, and your capacity for success. I'm Dr. Kenny, root cause health detective, and gut brain health is what I work with every day. So if you've been trying to push through foggy thinking or inconsistency with more discipline, let's look at the gut's side of the story here. And if this kind of gut-brain content already resonates, tap like or share with a friend who's been having some of the same gut feelings. In this society, most of us are taught, either directly or indirectly, that our clarity and our success comes from effort alone. If you've ever told yourself that you just need more discipline when your brain feels a little slower than usual, you've probably been living this exact story. This can look like having to reread emails 3 times over to get it, or procrastinating on simple decisions, or even needing more energy to do the work that used to be a breeze to get through. Or maybe it even looks like difficulty focusing and ADHD type symptoms. This push-through mentality that we experience is so normal in our society that we rarely question it. It's woven into the very fabric of how our society talks about success, productivity, and even self-worth. And when things feel harder than they should, the reflex is almost automatic. You try and override the signal or push past it. But that story doesn't really explain what many people actually experience here. You can care deeply, you can be entirely capable, and still notice that clarity comes and goes. Some days feel like your thinking is clean and clear and decisive, and other days it feels heavier or noisier, or like you're trudging through a swamp of your own thoughts. And the subtlety that we have become desensitized to is that it usually doesn't show up as a complete burnout picture or exhaustion. It shows up as friction. It can be second guessing or mental clutter, not finding the right words, or that sense that you're doing the same things, but again, they're costing you more than they used to. But there is another way to understand what's happening here. A helpful concept to start with here is mental bandwidth. We're not talking about intelligence or individual abilities. We're talking about availability. Mental bandwidth is the amount of clarity, focus, or decision-making capacity that your system can access at any given moment or chapter in time. If you notice your ability to make decisions changes from day to day, that's a bandwidth fluctuation, not a character issue. And like any of the resources that we tap into, it expands and it contracts based on the internal conditions and our environment, not character traits that we can just develop. That's why you can be fully capable, yet still struggle to access that capability consistently. So let's go through a quick gut check while you're listening. When you notice your clarity or energy dropping during the day, what's usually the first thing that you blame? Is it mindset? Is it your schedule? Or maybe your body if it's a physical manifestation? Drop a word or a short phrase in the comment for what that barrier looks like for you. It'll help shape some angles that I can attack gut brain health in future videos. So once we shift the clarity conversation to this idea of mental bandwidth, the question starts to shift as well that we should be asking ourselves. Instead of asking, why can't I push through this? A more useful question becomes, what's shaping how much bandwidth I actually have access to right now, and how can I influence it? And this is where the conversation starts to go beyond mindset alone, and we turn our attention to resources. The truth is that the brain doesn't generate clarity in isolation. It's constantly responding to signals coming from the body, and a huge source of those signals are directly from the gut. And the most interesting part is how fast those communication signals actually happen. There are certain sensory cells in the gut called neuropod cells, pretty cool name, that they can actually relay information to the brain in milliseconds. You can think of these cells as these fast-lane gut sensors that hit your brain almost instantly, even before you have formed a conscious thought. In other words, this sets the stage that the brain isn't always deciding first and then checking with the body later. Sometimes it's responding before you're even aware a signal has been sent. When your gut is under strain, you may not perceive it, but your nervous system does not ignore it. It adapts, it diverts resources, and that adaptation can subtly change how much mental effort it takes to get through your normal day. And imagine adding a little extra pressure on top of that with a stressed out nervous system, let's say with a major life transition or a stressful work situation. It just adds further fuel to the mental bandwidth fire. And this is why gut health shows up in these conversations around clarity, around mood, and around mental capacity and follow through, even when digestive symptoms are not present at all or not the main issue. Inside our guts, of course, lives a complex ecosystem of microbes. It's called the microbiome. And these organisms aren't passive players that are just passing through. They interact with your nervous system, your own immune cells, and they're constantly signaling. And human research actually shows that the gut microbiome communicates with our stress pathways and our nervous system, and it signals in ways that influence how reactive we are and even the resilience of our brain function and the way that we perceive pressure. Now, this likely falls short of microbes controlling your thoughts directly, but it's an interesting question. It means that they do shape or play a role in the background noise that your brain is working with to decide your set point. And the encouraging part about this is that your microbial ecosystem is highly modifiable through your lifestyle factors and targeted interventions as well. When this signaling, this highway between the gut and the brain is balanced, the brain tends to work with more ease. When it's disrupted, everything just takes a little bit more effort. Maybe your sugar cravings are even louder, or your emotional responses can become a bit more reactive. It's not an inherent character flaw. This is a system that is working with different inputs and limited resources. And by the way, if you're someone who likes to dive into the research about how these things work, I've put together a concise research summary. It walks through human studies on gut-brain connections just like this in a way that's easy to digest and has some great implementable steps along the way. You'll find that in the pinned comment and the description below. Now, once we start to really internalize and understand that clarity and mental bandwidth is shaped by signaling and the cumulative load on our systems, not just effort or something that you can power through, another question starts to make sense in a lot of people's minds. Why does pushing harder sometimes make everything worse instead of better? When the gut and the nervous system are communicating smoothly and in a safe environment, whether we're talking about food signals or mental emotional signals, deposits are being made into your energetic bank account. When you feel rested, for instance, and not particularly stressed out, you may notice that's where a lot of your ideas come to fruition. Your thinking may feel clearer, your decisions feel a little bit steadier, and there's just less pressure in terms of cognitive load. When your digestion is strained and the signaling is noisy between the gut and the brain, withdrawals can happen faster than you're making deposits. And this is where mental effort requires a lot more resources, or your focus drains that bank account quicker. And even when you're technically trying just as hard as you did yesterday, the return may feel smaller, or the availability of resources much smaller. And one practical way this shows up is that if you feel like your brain budget, if you will, is gone by the late morning, even with enough sleep or a nice dinner or breakfast that morning, that's a clue to look at your gut and overall stress physiology, not just your planner or what your load looks like objectively. That's often the moment that you start to push harder or reach for that cup of coffee. But if your piggy bank balance is already low, more effort or adding caffeine on top of that stressed out nervous system can accelerate the drain even further. In a culture that equates success with discipline and productivity for the sake of productivity, reduced clarity can get misinterpreted quite frequently. Oh, they're just lazy, or oh, they're not trying hard enough. But if thinking feels harder, the assumption is that motivation has dropped or willpower gets the blame. And the sneakiest part of this is it puts a lot of immense pressure on our systems. Negative self-talk, self-blame are one of those hidden stressors that light up our stress physiology and create chronic stress chemistry to flood our systems. And unfortunately, when you try to override the signals and push past fatigue or those mental walls of capacity that are just signaling they need a little rest and restoration, the system responds by narrowing resources further oftentimes. This reinforces the belief that something about you might not be working between the societal pressure and the internal systems. For many people, simply reframing that what's wrong with me mindset to what is my system trying to tell me with this signal. This is the turning point where progress finally becomes sustainable because you're listening to a tiny little voice that's actually a lot more truthful than what society says we should be doing with productivity. Because when you zoom out, what stands out is how interconnected our systems truly are. And the gut brain is a perfect example of such a connection. When one area is under strain, the others adapt or divert resources to help with that. And unfortunately, the gut becomes one of the largest levers that we can influence given the standard American diet and how subtly chronic stress is building in the society overall. And that adaptation shows up as reduced clarity or lower stress tolerance, for instance, but it can start to tip the scales into what we see as pathology or signs that actually start to get diagnoses, because stress physiology underlies almost every chronic condition that we see in the US today. When we respect these combination of signals that shape your mental bandwidth as not just an effort-only approach, the brain starts to work with the body, not against it. We're talking about resources and sustaining and longevity rather than pushing through at all costs. Just know that what you've been feeling, if you've encountered this, is not a lack of effort. It's information from the body. And if this connects with your own health journey and you're looking to help make sense of how it's all connected and the pieces fit together, I do offer a free health mystery map call in Texas, California, or Florida. It's a chance to share your case with me and we can dive and see if my approach to functional medicine might be a good fit for you. You'll find the link in the description below. And as you move forward through this conversation, one powerful next step is to start noticing patterns. When your clarity dips or your focus suffers, what was happening in your gut or your stress or your sleep patterns maybe a day or two before that started? That kind of observation and then journaling your symptoms takes those feelings that feel random and vague into usable data that can give future conversations a foundation to build on. And if this conversation about clarity and gut health resonated with you, you're definitely going to want to check out this video where I go over 12 hidden stressors that keep us stuck in this loop and that make pushing harder backfire on our physiology every time. I'm Dr. Kenny, Root Cause Health Detective. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.